Wolverine. He's the very best at what he does, but what he does isn't very nice. But how did he get so good? And why is what he does not very nice? When we first got to know Wolverine in the comics, his life was shrouded in mystery. That was what made him such a fascinating figure. His retconned origins, often referred to by the name of the comic it was featured in, Wolverine Origins. Wolverine was born James Howlett. He grew up in Alberta, Canada, and was known for being a rather sickly child. He grew up playing alongside his childhood companions, Dog, the son of the groundskeeper, a rough kid with a rough life, as his extremely mean father was often drawn to drinking, bouts of anger, and mistreating him, taking out his anger at the world and his place in it on his son. And Rose, a young girl who had been brought to the Howlett estate from the village to act as a playmate for young James, because she was around the same age as him. Rose had distinct red hair and ended up becoming James's first love. This was where his love of redheads began. James's powers manifested on one tragic night where both his mother and father had lost their lives in a dramatic turn of events. Seriously, it's like James's life, or the origins of it, was a soap opera. James fled the estate with Rose, escaping to start a new life elsewhere. Dog, however, would later follow after them, tasked with hunting down James at the behest of his grandfather. The traumatic events of the night when his powers first manifested caused James to lose some of his memories as a result. He and Rose settled down in British Columbia, and to disguise himself, James took the name of Logan so that he wouldn't be found. Although, I think Rose just kept using her own name. You would think that she would have changed hers too for safety, but I guess James was the only one that they were really concerned about being pursued at that time. I don't know. It was during this time that Logan also gained the nickname of Wolverine, because he worked like an animal. Get it? Like a Wolverine. Look, this is an origin story, so we have to tie everything neatly in together, okay? There have been other callbacks that have referenced why Logan goes by the codename Wolverine, but this is, I believe, the earliest mention of why that is in terms of his character history. Logan had developed feelings for Rose but could not act on them because the two of them had also chosen the cover story of being cousins. Instead, when she revealed she had feelings for another man in town, Smitty, Logan was forced to accept his unconfessed and thus unrequited love for her and decided to just give the couple his blessing. However, just when Rose and Smitty were gearing up to leave the mining town they were in, Dog found them. Well, found Rose and, of course, Logan, aka James, and another tragedy ensued where during a scrap with Dog, Logan accidentally killed Rose. Following this, Logan was even more traumatized and set out into the wilderness, giving in to his animalistic side fully and running with a pack of wolves for some time. It was during this time that he came across a genetically modified polar bear who slaughtered his pack. Avenging the death of his pack, Logan slew the polar bear in kind, which caused Nathaniel Essex to take notice of him. Because yeah, Nathaniel Essex had been the one who modified that polar bear. Nathaniel Essex later tracked Logan down and captured him, conducting experiments on the feral mutant. Wolverine would escape, however, with some help, only to end up captured by a circus where he was being displayed as a sort of circus freak. Once again, he was still pretty animalistic at this time. Also, I gotta say, the X-Men in general have a long and complex history with the circus. I could do a whole video just on that. There are so many circuses in X-Men comics, and this one in Wolverine's history is just one, honestly, of many. It was during this time at the circus that he'd run into Creed. Not Victor Creed, but his sister, Clara Creed, and her brother, also not Victor, Saul Creed. During this encounter, Logan and Clara would end up having a brief romance that ended in, you guessed it, tragedy. Like pretty much all of Logan's relationships do, sadly. Sorry, Wolverine. This time, Saul would end up dead at Logan's hands, which would later cause problems for Wolverine with, of course, Victor Creed, aka Sabretooth. Sabretooth would come across Logan after this when he'd settled in the Rockies, finding happiness with his then romantic partner, Silver Fox, after being accepted by her tribe. It was during this time that their dog Blue got rabies, and while initially it seemed as though Logan was forced to put the dog down, we later learn he was unable to bring himself to do it, and Silver Fox was actually the one to do the deed instead. Their time together was cut short by the arrival of Sabretooth, who was seeking revenge for his brother's death. This is because every year on Saul's birthday, Victor shows up to torment his brother. But with Saul no longer around, he decided to just transfer this treatment as punishment to Logan. So on Logan's birthday, Victor killed Silver Fox. Or maybe he didn't, but he probably did. The consistency of these events have become foggy over the years, likely as a result of Wolverine's memories being loosey-goosey when they involve trauma, and and also as a result of them often being tampered with. Following these events, Logan would be manipulated into killing the people of the nearby town, apparently being manipulated by both Sabretooth and, retroactively we learn, Romulus. Romulus is one of the oldest Wolverine villains in addition to Sabretooth, but like I said, Romulus was much later retconned into this part in his history, so keep that in mind. Romulus is super important until all of a sudden he's not anymore, basically. Wolverine would travel the world taking up many professions. He would serve in the military, become a mercenary, and even study abroad in Japan, becoming a bona fide samurai. It was during this period that he worked alongside Logan, Lord Logan, who would later become a Wolverine villain, and the original Nick Fury, in addition to other famous figures from Marvel history. There's a lot of them, so I'm not gonna list them all, but just trust me, Wolverine's basically had to team up with everyone throughout his history at some point. He would also have other retcon run-ins written in later at this point with characters who would later become very important to his story, such as villains Bloodscream, Nuke, Cyber, and sometimes lover, sometimes ally, more often villain, Mystique. Eventually, he would once again find peace in Japan, studying under Bando Saburo in Jasmine Falls. He would also find love here, once again, with a resident of Jasmine Falls, Itsu. Itsu and Logan would marry and be blessed with a child, but before Itsu could give birth, she was killed by none other than Winter Soldier. Yeah, really everyone is tied in, you see what I'm saying? However, the child miraculously survived this due to him being the son of Wolverine, and was later taken by Romulus, who manipulated his origin so that he would grow up to despise his father. Romulus intended to use the boy named Akihiro, but he preferred to use the cruel nickname given to him by his adoptive parents and those around, who preferred to use the cruel nickname that was given to him when he was younger, Daken, as a weapon. Following this tragedy, Wolverine decided to join the Weapon X project. It was here that he would constantly have his mind wiped and be used as a weapon by the Weapon Plus program as a member of Team X, serving alongside Maverick, Sabretooth, and surprisingly, Silver Fox. Was it really her? Or a clone? Or something else? Was it an illusion? Those were just some of his team though, there were also other members, but those are a few of my favorites, so that's who I mentioned. If you thought Weapon X was bad, wait till you see where he went next. Somehow in the comics, Canada's military has always appeared to be even more evil than America's, as it was evident when he joined Department K, who also had ties to Weapon X. And I gotta say, as someone who is a Canadian, I'm gonna just say, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of shady stuff our government does, but I don't think they're that shady, so just so you know, FYI. It was during this time that Logan would be confronted with the truth by Sabretooth, something he'd suppressed for a long time. No, not that he was Sabretooth's son, although that was something that would be alluded to for years between them, but it's not really a thing, or is it a thing? But he would be confronted with the fact that he, Logan, was indeed a mutant. Logan mulled this over, escaping to the Yukon and drowning his woes in drink, but would later leave Canada after accidentally killing a fellow agent. Oops. Before he could leave, he was captured by Weapon X again and had his skeleton forcibly fused with adamantium. He would eventually escape Weapon X, which would lead to his first historical appearance in Incredible Hulk issue number 180. Before he appeared in Hulk though, he would meet the Hudsons, currently known as the superheroes Guardian and Nemesis, and be recruited to join Department H. Logan's fight against the Hulk would attract Professor X's attention, who would convince him to leave Department H and join his new X-Men team. It was here that Wolverine would develop a rivalry with Cyclops, a very intense one, in large part due to his feelings for teammate Jean Grey, who was Slim's girl. But also because I feel like, you know, Scott and Logan have some different ideologies in their life and how they approach vigilantism. From here, he would have a whole bunch of adventures with the X-Men, and he would become a super popular character. He'd become so popular he'd get his own limited solo series, which in turn would sell so well that would lead to his own ongoing series. Well, this series has been reset time and time again to the point that we're on volume 7 in terms of Wolverine issues throughout the character's history. We've actually had more than 1,000. His last legacy numbered issue was back in 2011, so we have to be nearing another milestone soon for him.
Wolverine's healing factor is his defining and most extraordinary power. It's a little OP if you ask me. This accelerated healing allows him to recover from almost any injury, any wound, any deep slash, any severe burn, or even be dismembered, God forbid, he can heal. But this power goes beyond mere healing, and some speculate it's actually an advanced survival mechanism that adapts his body to survive in even the most extreme environments, or events, or battles. Wolverine has withstood nuclear blasts, survived losing parts of his body that you probably shouldn't, and overcome toxins and diseases that would be fatal to any other person. His healing factor has also significantly slowed his aging process, that's why they cast Hugh Jackman, meaning that he appears to be in his prime always, despite having lived for over a century. God, Hugh Jackman's so handsome. Adamantium skeleton. Wolverine's skeletal structure is one of the most indestructible aspects of his body, and that's all thanks to adamantium bonding. During his time as a test subject for Weapon X, a government program designed to create super soldiers, his bones were coated with this nearly indestructible metal, turning his skeleton into, well, you saw what Deadpool did to him, right? It worked. Not only does this make his bones unbreakable, but it also gives his claws, which are housed within his forearms, the ability to slice through almost anything and anybody. Ooh, yikes. The mystery of his past. Wolverine's origins are steeped in mystery and intrigue. I mean, makes it a good comic book, right? His early life is clouded by amnesia, making it difficult to piece together the truth of his own past. It's believed that Wolverine once had a family, but they were tragically taken out by Sabretooth, his now fierce rival. However, the truth of this claim is actually uncertain, as both Wolverine and Sabretooth had their memories tampered with during their involvement in said Weapon X program. Wolverine's only tangible connection to his past is a wedding ring, a constant reminder of the family that he lost. Weapon X. Weapon X was the secret program that transformed Wolverine into the ultimate weapon, pun intended. Through brutal experiments, they bonded adamantium to his bones, making him nearly invulnerable, and of course at the same time erased his memories, leaving him as Mutant Zero, a blank slate all in their control. Now these experiments gave him unmatched power, but at the cost of his freedom and humanity. The program's grip on Wolverine shaped his life, raising the haunting question, can he ever truly break free from the influence of Weapon X and reclaim what he once was? 9 movies later, we still don't have an answer. Sabretooth. I mentioned this bad guy earlier, let's talk about him a bit more. Wolverine's rivalry with Sabretooth is one of the most personal and intense in the Marvel universe. See, both were subjects of the Weapon X program, and their shared history has been defined by bitter hatred and violent clashes. Now Sabretooth, of course with his own mutant abilities, has been a constant thorn in Wolverine's side, and their battles are messy and they're quite legendary. Wolverine has tried to take out Sabretooth on numerous occasions, with one of the most memorable moments being when he, took this off his body, right? Can't say it, but you know it. However, despite Wolverine's best efforts, Sabretooth always seems to come back, relentless and ready for more. The Gulf War encounter. Wolverine's time during the Gulf War is a significant moment in his life, as it marks a turning point in his journey towards reclaiming this humanity that he seeks. While under the control of Weapon X, Wolverine was once again deployed into battle. Now, during a vehicle ambush, Wolverine was freed and, in a savage display of power, took out all of his enemies. Every single one. You're out of here. However, what followed was an unexpected moment of kindness, which sounds weird after what I just said. He then encountered Nick Fury, a fellow soldier who recognized him from an earlier encounter during World War II. Now Wolverine, seeing Fury injured, carried him to safety, a rare act of humanity for the otherwise ruthless and cold Wolverine that we knew at that time, and this act of compassion would later play a critical role in his escape from Weapon X, as Fury then helped him break free from the program's control. Nick Fury's an OG. Joining the X-Men. Wolverine's entrance into the X-Men was anything but conventional. See, initially he was sent by Magneto to infiltrate the team and eliminate Professor Xavier. However, Wolverine soon found himself drawn to Xavier's ideals and the cause of the X-Men themselves. His initial motivations were based on manipulation and espionage, but over time he formed deep bonds with his fellow mutants, particularly Jean Grey. Yeah, we know what happens there. His connection with Jean grew complicated, if I can say that, and despite his initial mission to destroy the X-Men from within, Wolverine ended up betraying Magneto and truly joined the X-Men. Sabretooth's return. And he's back, just when we thought we lost him. Even after Wolverine took out Sabretooth, his rivalry with the villain did not end. It's a comic book, it's never gonna end. Sabretooth returned in a shocking twist, and his resurrection came with a massive revelation. He claimed to be Wolverine's biological father. It's like Star Wars all over again. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to their already fraught relationship, as it now blurred the lines between family and rivalry. Now what do we do? Do we attack him? Do we not? Are we cool? Are we family? Dad? What? Wolverine, whose past was already shrouded in mystery, was now forced to confront the idea that his most hated enemy might also now be his father. God, that's an uncomfortable dinner. Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk. Ultimate Wolverine's encounter with the Hulk in Tibet stands as one of his most brutal and surprising battles, and I really want to see it on screen. My gosh. Tasked by S.H.I.E.L.D. with eliminating the Hulk, good luck, Wolverine tracked him down, but what ensued was a vicious confrontation. Despite Wolverine's healing factor, the Hulk literally ripped him in half, leaving Wolverine to regenerate and climb back up the mountainside to recover his missing limbs. Yeah, we've all been there before. Yeah, I can relate. Their battle was not just about strength and power, but also about understanding the tragic nature of their respective existences. After their fight, Wolverine and the Hulk shared a moment of mutual respect. That's an odd fist bump. And they acknowledged each other's strength. Hey, good game. I'm gonna go find my legs. Cool. Wolverine's ultimate fate. So how does this end? How did the Ultimates end Wolverine? Wolverine's ultimate fate came during the Ultimatum storyline, where he faced off against his longtime adversary, Magneto. In this final confrontation, there was a massive twist. Magneto ripped the adamantium from Wolverine's skeleton, rendering him now vulnerable for the first time in years. The battle culminated in Wolverine's passing as Magneto used his powers to finish him. And this time, he was actually gone. This tragic passing was a sobering moment in the X-Men's history, but it didn't erase his legacy. Wolverine's impact on the mutant world was profound, and his passing left a void that would continue to shape the future of all mutant kind. Altered origin. In the Ultimate Universe, Wolverine's origin takes a darker and, sadly, a more tragic turn. This version of Logan, introduced in Ultimate Universe 1 year in, is captured by Directorate X, a shadowy organization aiming to create the perfect hero. Well, lack thereof, really. Unlike his mainstream counterpart, this Logan is unable to escape their control and is transformed into a mindless tool of destruction, referred to as only the Specimen. His captors pushed his healing abilities to their limits and used him as a living nightmare for their agenda. Now, this heartbreaking twist does highlight how the Ultimate Universe reimagines classic heroes. Just like we saw when it redefined Spider-Man by starting his story in his adulthood, this story here redefines Wolverine by stripping away all of his freedom, which is a core part of his character. So now we get this monster. This new storyline positions Wolverine as a tragic figure whose eventual escape will be marked by rage and regret, emphasizing the theme of rejecting the Maker's manipulated world.
Number 10. Kills. One of the worst things about Wolverine in general, but also maybe one of the best things, is that he kills. Or more now that he's willing to kill, I guess. Although back in the day, he really did kill pretty indiscriminately. And like I said, it was basically what made him one of the worst, while also being the best at what he does. Although, as Wolverine has even said himself, what he does isn't usually very nice. Now Wolverine is more reserved to maiming those he comes up against, only really killing those who he feels really deserve it, who are beyond redemption. But even then, the fact that Wolverine thinks he gets to decide those folks' fate could be seen as, well, pretty problematic. I mean, Wolverine's a pretty good dude all around, but I still don't think, even as a hero, that he should get the judgment call on who lives and who dies. You know what I mean? It definitely makes him a way more complex and interesting character. I will say that, so it is good in that way. Number 9. Almost killed an innocent. During his first long-running Wolverine series, Wolverine at one point must face off against Lady Deathstrike. The first time around that this happens in the series is back in the past, after Wolverine has seemingly traveled back in time via a picture. It makes a lot more sense if you read the story, but it's basically what happens. While attempting to escape Lady Deathstrike and defeat the German World War II soldiers who have infiltrated the part of Spain Wolverine is in, he and the rebels are faced with the decision of what to do with a young prisoner who has seen too much and could cause them to be captured if he's forced to talk. Prisoner's name is Jamie, by the way. I didn't write that down, but I know that, just in case you're wondering. One of the options on the table is to simply take out the prisoner Jamie, but because of his age, Wolverine ultimately helps to let the boy go and set him free. However, for a small moment there, it is implied that Wolverine has basically made the other choice and decided to kill the prisoner rather than let him walk free, with a promise that he won't tell anyone what he has seen or heard about where the rebels are headed. It's a very shocking moment where you're like, wait, did that just happen? Don't worry, it didn't happen. Oh, it only almost happened. The notion was entertained, and that I I think is still pretty bad. Number 8. Relationship with Squirrel Girl. Wolverine's relationship with Squirrel Girl, as was established in New Avengers, might be considered by some to be one of the worst things he's ever done, or that was ever done to him as a character, I guess. This is likely because Squirrel Girl, aka Doreen Green, is often depicted as being from a different generation entirely than Wolverine, and that's not even considering that he's actually even older than he appears and than the generation that he first appeared in. Squirrel Girl and Wolverine were implied to have had a romantic relationship in the 2010 New Avengers series in issue number 7, and many consider it to be pretty odd. And I gotta say, the way it's also kind of weirdly like shoehorned in there, you're like, what? Why is this in here? What purpose narratively does this really give us? And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about Wolverine, then be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Goodness knows he's done a lot of bad things. Even Wolverine would say that though. He'd be like, I got a lot of things in my closet. I got a lot of skeletons in my closet, bub. Number 7. Killed Jean Grey. Wolverine has done this on multiple occasions, and in one instance, kinda killed Jean on repeat, stuck on a loop of death after she refused to stay dead thanks to the resurrection powers of the Phoenix Force. Initially, Wolverine killed Jean out of mercy to save her from a gruesome death, burning up as they were in a space shuttle that was rapidly getting closer and closer to the sun. However, this death was actually quite helpful, as it allowed Jean to at least regenerate, unlocking her full potential as the Phoenix, which meant that she could actually then save them, so yay! And surprisingly, she also wasn't even mad about Wolverine killing her. Bonus! I'd be pretty mad, to be honest. I'd be like, wow, you just killed me. That's pretty shady, man. But I guess when you're like, but you unlocked my full potential, it's like, well, alright. Shortly thereafter, Jean would be killed permanently by Magneto, but years later would return again, only to have Wolverine, afraid of the potential of Dark Phoenix, along with the rest of the X-Men, kill her on repeat for a while by stabbing her through with his claws until he realized this wasn't exactly having the same effect that he'd hoped, as the Phoenix Force basically just kept rezzing Jean, so doesn't always work out. Still, that's a lot of Jean deaths. That is, I think, at least 9 Jean deaths total. I think 8 stabbies the one time, 1 stabby the other time. A lot of deaths. A lot of deaths without any actual death, actually, now that I think about it. Number 6. Got even with the Punisher. So the Punisher has done some pretty heinous things to Wolverine over the years in their ongoing fight for who can be the most edgy. This has less to do with Wolverine and Punisher feuding within the comics, and more to do with shots being fired between a few of their passionate writers, Wolverine's Frank Thierry and Punisher's Garth Ennis. Now granted, Thierry has also written a few Punisher titles in his time, although I don't think Ennis has ever written a Wolverine titled book, at least not as far as I know, which is surprising to me. But anyways, I digress. In Thierry's 2003 issue of Wolverine, issue 186, Thierry ended up aiming to get revenge on the Punisher for what Garth Ennis had him do in 2002 during his Marvel Knights run on Punisher in issue number 17. Ennis had Punisher brutally attack and maim Wolverine, basically, even going so far as to steamroll him, and some other things, which I don't know if I can even say on YouTube, but they were bad. To get revenge, Thierry had Wolverine imply the Punisher was gay. Doesn't sound so bad until you read it and you see how it's presented, with Logan implying the Punisher is basically lesser or less of a man or a hero because of his possible sexual orientation. Yikes. Maybe don't do that. Maybe don't write that. It's unfortunate because now that's also on Wolverine as a character. Eek. Number 5. Actually killed innocents. Other than Jamie, who Wolverine seemingly almost had killed but then ultimately did not have killed, and the countless other baddies that Wolverine has faced and defeated over the years, there are also other youngsters that Wolverine has been forced to take down. One of the worst moments where Wolverine has been forced to eliminate a youth happens actually outside of the main continuity in the Ultimate Universe, the reality of Earth 1610. Here, Wolverine is sent on a mission to do the X-Men's dirty work by taking out a young mutant who threatens the very rights mutants are basically fighting for. The sad part, really isn't this kid's fault. His mutant power simply manifested without him knowing and caused him to accidentally vaporize the entire residents of his town, including seemingly his high school crush or his girlfriend or sweetheart and his parents. So really feels pretty bad, and you're like, wow, Wolverine, really, wow, that's what you're doing? But he's like, hey, I gotta protect the mutants or something by killing a mutant or something. Seems a little shady, the reasoning there. Number 4. Became Apocalypse. Of course, this one also did not happen in the main continuity, but hey, it still happened, so it still counts. This all went down in Age of Apocalypse, where Wolverine, here known as Weapon X, would fight against Apocalypse for most of his life. At one point, he was part of Magneto's X-Men, but would leave them to rescue Jean Grey, his love and later his wife, and fight alongside her against Apocalypse in their own way. Eventually, however, Jean was believed to have been killed and Weapon X would become recluse, only to find out years later that she was actually alive. Dun dun dun. When the Celestials returned to Earth following the death of Apocalypse, James Howlett offered himself to the Celestials in order to prevent the destruction of Earth. However, this caused him to become the very villain he had hated the most, as the Celestials used tech to modify him, giving him great power but basically warping his mind, and causing him to become Apocalypse's heir, known as Weapon Omega. He was basically just like, evolution is what it's all about, baby. People were like, but don't you see? You're Apocalypse now. And he's like, but it's different. I'm trying to save people by killing people. Wait a minute, maybe you're right. Number 3, killed the Mongrels. These last few spots are definitely all competitors for the number 1 spot on this list in my opinion. This one is especially bad because the Mongrels were actually Wolverine's children, although he didn't know it at the time that he was forced to fight them. They were rounded up by his known son with Itsu, Daken. Daken was working with the Red Right Hand, a group who had a personal vendetta against Wolverine. Daken created the team known as the Mongrels, not even really to defeat Wolverine, despite Daken having trained them himself. It was kind of like a win-win situation for him. Either Wolverine would be killed by the children he didn't know or had forgotten he'd sired over the years, or Wolverine would end up killing them all. The latter was kind of how it went down, and when Wolverine learned that the members of the Mongrels had actually all been his children, and he didn't know that, he was pretty heartbroken. So I guess point 1 for Red Right Hand and Daken. Only sad points for Wolverine. No points for the Mongrels because they died. Number 2, made moves on MJ. So this one is so awful, it of course cannot come from the main canon of Earth 616. Instead, this point comes to us from the alternate reality of Earth 1610, also known as the Ultimate Universe. After Wolverine had she attempted to get back at him by making him telepathically swap bodies with the person he hated the most, which ended up being Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Although Jean later says, oh sorry, I didn't know this would happen to you, Peter. Oops. But anyways. While swapped, both heroes struggle to deal with the everyday while occupying each other's bodies. However, Wolverine still manages to find some time to put some moves on MJ. Well, they don't seal the deal. This is really messed up because Mary Jane at this point in time is a teenager, and she didn't even know that Peter and Logan had swapped bodies, so she thought that it was just Peter looking for some action instead of the super old at this point thanks to his healing factor X-Men hero Wolverine. Although not a very heroic moment here, Wolverine. What you doing? Don't do that. Number 1, kill Daken. I think one of the worst things you can do as a parent is to kill those you're supposed to be looking out for and taking care of and protecting, even if your son happens to be the often villainous Daken, now commonly referred to by his actual birth/human name, Akihiro. At one point, Wolverine was forced to put down Akihiro during a fight. Akihiro had held a grudge against his old man for years, having been trained by Romulus to hate Logan after being stolen from his mother's womb and raised by Romulus. For years, Wolverine thought his son was dead, not knowing to come searching for Akihiro. But Akihiro was raised to believe he was basically abandoned, and he also grew up in a household where people didn't like him because he was half Japanese and half Canadian, so that was another issue. Thanks to some plotting from the devious and diabolical mind of Victor Creed, aka Wolverine's nemesis Sabretooth, Wolverine was forced into a death match with Daken, a match that ended with Wolverine killing Akihiro, drowning him in a puddle, while sadly thinking of what could have been had Akihiro been given a chance at a semi-normal life, being raised by Wolverine and of course his now deceased mother Itsu. What would it have been like if their life had been happy? We'll never know because he gets drowned in a puddle.